You ever have
broke
one of
the
those
law,
days
and
where you
you
wake
know
up
it.
thinking,
These
life's
officers
just going to
agree
be
with me.
simple,
Yeah,
get
they
up,
work for the
feed the
county,
animals,
not for
maybe
you.
have a cup of
Get off
coffee
my land
before the
before I
heat
make
sets
you.
in, and
How
then by
dare you
sunset,
defy a
your
court
world's
order?
upside down and you're
Sorry,
wondering
I
if you accidentally
not
signed
leaving
up
my
to
home
be the
because of
main
your
character
paperwork.
in a bad sitcom.
You should have seen his face
Yeah,
when the
that
siren went off.
happened.
Oh,
But let me
stop
back
it.
up a
That's
sec.
terrible.
The trouble started the way
No,
most things
seriously,
do
the
out
look
here
on his face.
quietly, and then all at once. Before I get into the weeds, I should probably say I'd love to know where you're listening from. Go ahead, drop a pin in the comments. Let me know if you've ever dealt with anything this ridiculous. My name's Mark Thomas, and if there's one thing I've learned out here, it's that problems come in just two flavors. Either there's not enough rain or there's way too much government. Sometimes you get both, like an unwelcome casserole at a church potluck. And this time, well, this time it was both. All wrapped up in one woman, Karen Dane, president of the Lundy's Landing County Homeowners Association, in a pantsuit the color of an ambulance and a temper to match. To her, the little badge she wore was more than a nameplate. It was a crown made of thorns, but she meant them for everybody else. My ranch, which my granddad staked out with blood and sweat and the deed to prove it, butted right up to her kingdom. Copy-paste roofs, lawns, so perfect you'd think they were made of AstroTurf, and rules for everything from grass height to mailbox color. Out here, my red barn was a landmark. To her, it was an eyesore, a blight on the community, whatever that means. My cattle, well, in her world, they weren't a living, they were just a smell. And my fence. According to Karen, that was an insult. It started like all dumb things with a piece of paper. Some notice slapped on my front gate with half a roll of duct tape telling me the color of my barn, a good classic unapologetic red, was in violation of Lundy's Landing Architectural Guideline 14B. I read it, laughed, and then used it to start a fire under my burn pile. The Thomas Ranch was here before Lundy's Landing was even a blip on a developer's radar. We weren't in their HOA, never had been, never would be. I figured. That's the end of it. You know what I mean? Wrong. Turns out being right doesn't always mean being left alone. A week later, I'm out by the fence mending a busted wire when who rolls up? But Karen herself, 2 sheriff's deputies in tow. One was young, probably still learning what half the codes on his radio meant. The other was Deputy Cruz, older, world-weary, the kind of guy who looked like he'd seen every bit of nonsense the county had to offer and was done being surprised. Karen's out front pointing a manicured finger at me like she's picking out a bad apple at the grocery store. That man right there, he is willfully defying a legal compliance order, she's saying. I want him arrested for trespassing on his own property. Okay, maybe she didn't say the last part out loud, but you could see it written all over her face. Samantha, my girlfriend, and the best person I know, she's standing just behind my shoulder holding her phone up steady. That little red recording light always on when Karen's around. Smile for the camera. Karen, Sam said, her voice sweet as honey. Try not to look like you're about to ask for the manager of the whole county. Karen's eyes could have cut glass. You are interfering with an official proceeding, she snapped. I could have you fined. I'll add it to the tab. I leaned against the fence post, arms crossed, and just watched her. I've learned the more someone yells, the quieter you should get. It drives them nuts. Ma'am, I said, nice and calm, as I explained in the letter my lawyer sent you, my property is not and never has been part of your association. This fence is the line. You're on your side, I'm on mine. Simple concept. Deputy Cruz sighed long and tired like his coffee wore off hours ago. Ma'am, he's right. We checked the county plat maps. The Thomas Ranch is zoned agricultural and predates the Lundy's Landing development. We don't have jurisdiction for a civil code violation here. You'd think that'd be the end of it, right? Simple fact, right from the law. But Karen, she lived in a different reality. She whips out a binder, flips it open, dramatic as anything. According to the preliminary annexation filings from the developer in 2005, she announces this entire parcel was designated for future residential integration. My bylaws give me the authority to enforce aesthetic cohesion in preparation for that integration. His barn is an affront to community standards. I almost laughed. Aesthetic cohesion. It's a barn. It's supposed to be red. What color do you want? HOA beige. So it blends in with the sky and the dirt and all that soul-crushing conformity. Precisely, she snaps, missing the joke entirely. Then she points at my old Ford F-250. Your truck is a commercial vehicle. It can't be parked in view of the road. And those chickens' livestock absolutely forbidden. She rattled off violations like she got paid by the word. Sam's camera was following her finger. "Mark, she's got you," Sam whispered, grinning. "The chickens look dangerous today." She zoomed in on a yawn. I fought a smile. They're plotting, I'm sure. Probably planning to install a non-compliant mailbox. I turned to the deputies. "Gentlemen, is there an actual crime here, or are we just spitballing?" Cruz just looked at me, then at Karen. "No, Mr. Thomas, there's no crime." "Ma'am, this is a civil matter. You'll have to take it to court." Karen's face twisted up so tight her lipstick looked painted on with a chisel. "This is unacceptable. Your job is to enforce the rules. My rules." She slammed her binder shut. "Fine. If you won't do your job, I'll do it for you. This isn't over, Mr. Thomas. You will be brought into compliance. I will see this ranch condemned. Your tractors, your cows gone. A beautiful neighborhood right where your ugly barn stands. This is your final warning." She spun around and marched back to her golf cart, which, by the way, was parked on the grass. The younger deputy just shook his head and followed. Deputy Cruz lingered, tipped his hat. "Sorry for the circus, Mark." "Not your fault, Jim," I said. "You're just the ringmaster they dragged in." He gave a tired smile. "Just be careful. That woman's got more fight than a cornered badger. She thinks the law is whatever she says it is. Good idea filming everything." "Footage, or it didn't happen," Sam said, not missing a beat. We watched them drive off the golf cart, whining like an angry hornet. The chickens went back to their plotting. But the peace felt thin, like a storm was coming. Karen's threat hung in the air like a bad smell. It wasn't about a barn anymore. She'd said the word condemned. She wanted my home, my family's legacy, just so everything could be beige. I looked at Sam, who was scrolling back through the video. "Well, that was fun." "She's a piece of work," Sam agreed, not looking up. "But she's clever. Preliminary annexation filings. Future residential integration. She's been digging. She's not making this up as she goes." There was a flicker of concern in her eyes. She didn't sound like a woman who'd let a little thing like the law stop her. "I think she's just getting started." Let me tell you, she was right. And I was about to find out just how low Karen would go and how far I'd have to go to stop her. The next morning dawned clear, but that knot in my stomach, yeah, it was still there, tight and ugly. You ever get that feeling like someone's got your name on a list and they're just waiting for you to screw up? That's what it was like. Every time a car rolled down the road, I glanced up, half expecting to see that damn golf cart coming back with Karen at the wheel, maybe this time, with a clipboard and another wild accusation. But what Karen had taken from me, even more than peace and quiet, was my sense of security. That's what bullies do first. They take your peace of mind and they make you wait for the next shoe to drop. Samantha. God bless her, she was a rock. While I was out walking the fence line, mending busted wire and listening to the distant whine of someone mowing their perfect lawn, Sam turned our kitchen table into a full-blown war room. Laptop open, coffee, going cold, stacks of printouts. She was cross-referencing every bylaw in the Lundy's Landing rulebook with state and county statutes. If Karen was going to use paperwork as a weapon, Sam was going to fight fire with fire. "Okay," she called from the porch, waving her coffee mug, her hair wild from a night of no sleep and too much scrolling. "I've read their entire charter. It's a masterpiece of vague threats. It's written so they can pretty much make anything a violation. A gnome that's too cheerful, violation. Flags too flaggy, violation. But here's the rub, every single one requires you to actually be in the HOA. Which I'm not," I said, stretching a new line of barbed wire so tight my gloves squeaked. "Which you're not," she confirmed. "But that future integration clause she mentioned, it's real. It was in the original developer plan. Only thing is, the county tossed it, wanted to keep this whole stretch rural as a buffer zone. She's using a 30-year-old dead proposal as her sword. So she's not just wrong, I grunted, twisting the wire. She's historically wrong. Sam laughed. She's trying to enforce the ghost of a bad idea. It should have made me feel better, but instead it just showed how far she'd go to get what she wanted. This wasn't about rules. This was about land.
These officers agree with me. Yeah.
They work for the county,
and that's when the next shoe dropped.
Get off my land before
not with
I
a
make
notice,
you.
not with a threat,
How
but with a
dare
direct,
you
mean,
defy
ugly
a court
move.
order?
2 days later, I'm out walking the
I'm
north
not leaving my
pasture,
home
checking
because
on a
of your
calf when I
paperwork.
notice something's off. The
You should have
cattle
seen
aren't
his
spread
face
out
when the
like
siren
usual.
went
They're
off.
clustered tight around the
stop it,
troughs,
that's
low
terrible.
and uneasy. I walk
No,
over.
seriously, the look
The
on his
water
face.
level's dangerously low. That's when my heart starts to hammer. Our water comes from a well-automatic valve's good strong pipe. It's never failed. But today, the float valve was open trying to fill, but there was barely a trickle. I followed the pipe back my boots, squishing in the mud, heart pounding, and there it was, a big industrial chain wrapped around the main shut-off valve. Big, shiny, with a brass padlock that practically glowed in the sun, stamped on the lock in tiny letters, LLHOA. My blood ran cold then hot. This wasn't a warning, this was sabotage. In the heat, my cattle couldn't last a day without water. This was cruel, dangerous, personal. She'd trespassed and threatened my animals. I ran for the barn, grabbed the biggest bolt cutters I could find, and sprinted back. Squeezed those jaws shut, white-knuckled, the lock creaked and finally snapped. I ripped the chain away and spun the valve wide open just in time to hear water rushing back through the pipes, the sweet sound of survival. The cattle came running. I stood there panting, the broken lock in my hand, angry enough to chew nails. That night I couldn't sleep. I knew what this meant. She'd be back. Once you cross a line like that, you don't stop. So I made a pot of coffee, grabbed my heavy flashlight, and told Sam I was heading out to keep watch. She didn't try to talk me out of it. She just handed me her phone. Keep this. And if you see anything, record first, talk second. I sat on an overturned bucket near the valve, the night thick with crickets and the occasional sleepy moo. The moon was gone behind the clouds, so I sat in the dark and waited. A little after 2 in the morning, I saw them, 2 shadows, moving by the fence line, flashlight flickering. They slipped under the wire, one carrying a new chain, the other something long and wooden. Karen and some guy who looked like he could bench press my truck. I started filming. The phone felt slick in my hands. Karen was pissed. She hissed at the broken lock, handed her buddy a new one. Use the epoxy this time, he won't cut through that. That's when I stood up, mag light blazing. Looking for something. My voice was cold, colder than I felt. Karen shrieked, shielding her eyes. The big guy turned, gripping his axe handle like he meant business. He swung it just enough to make a point, the kind of point that cracks pipe floods a pasture, kills a herd. You're trespassing, I said, and tampering with my property. That's a crime. Karen, all fire again, snapped. We're conducting a compliance check. Your unauthorized use of the shared aquifer is under review. I just laughed. My well, my land. You're cutting off water to my animals and you know it. That's felony animal cruelty in this state, Karen. The big guy looked uneasy, shifting from foot to foot. Stay back. This is official HOA business. He grunted, like that was supposed to mean something at 2 in the morning with an axe handle. I kept the phone rolling. You've got 10 seconds to get off my land before I call Deputy Cruz for trespass, vandalism, and animal cruelty. And I'll have it all on video. I thumbed the clip straight to Cruz. His reply came back quick. Got it. Keep filming. Karen hesitated. Even she could see she'd crossed into dangerous territory. She turned, snapped at her muscle, and they hustled back to the fence, swallowed up by the dark. I stood there for a long time, breathing hard, flashlight trembling a little. The adrenaline faded, and what was left was cold, hard resolve. This was a war now. She'd shown her hand. Sam uploaded the footage before I even made it back inside. But showing it to the cops, that felt like patching a leaky roof with a wet rag. Karen had just hired lawyers, twist the story. We needed more than defense. We needed offense. The next attack came from the sky. A high-pitched buzzing like a mosquito the size of a dinner plate hovering 50 feet above my barn. It was a drone, sleek white 4-rotor, its camera lens pointed right at me. For the next week, it followed me everywhere. It hovered over the cattle, spooked the horses, buzzed the kitchen window, while Sam and I tried to eat in peace. Psychological warfare. Karen couldn't step on my land, so she sent her robot. We called the sheriff. Film it. Don't shoot it, Cruz said. Gray area. Of course, Karen loved gray areas. One afternoon, I'd had enough. I was working a young filly in the corral drone hovering just over the fence. The horse was nervous. Every time she started to calm down, the drone zipped or dipped, setting her off again. That's when I spotted my lariat hanging on the fence. I'd been roping since I was a kid. I gave Sam a look. She grinned, started recording. You're not. Oh, I am. I built my loop, measured the wind, swung it overhead. The drone bobbed just out of reach. Then I let it fly. Perfect arc-open circle. For a second I thought I'd miss, but gravity did its thing and the loop dropped right over that plastic pest. I yanked the rope drone, tumbled down, crashed into a soft patch of hay. Silence. Beautiful, glorious silence. Sam laughed so hard she almost dropped her phone. You actually roped a drone. That is the most cowboy thing I've ever seen. I untangled the rope, checked the damage. Broken, rotor-cracked camera. But then I noticed a little micro SD card popped out in the hay. I picked it up. Is that? Sam asked. I think Karen just delivered her whole spy collection to us on a silver platter. We plugged the card into Sam's laptop and watched, stunned. There were hours of footage surveillance on everybody. My barn, my porch, my tractors, the neighbor's roses, the Miller kids' swing set. But the last videos, those were gold. Karen on the phone talking about me, talking about preliminary rezoning, about declaring my land a blight, about automatic foreclosure and redevelopment. She was plotting with her puppet board, fabricating new surveys. This wasn't just overreach. This was conspiracy, fraud. We needed to hit back and fast. Our first counterstrike, humor. Karen had lined our fence with a bunch of private property of Lundy's Landing HOA signs trying to stake a claim. That night, Sam and I went out with screwdrivers and flipped everyone around. Next morning, the entire neighborhood saw signs declaring their perfect lawns the property of Thomas Ranch. Residents were confused. The guard at the shack was baffled, and Karen was livid. Second move, her precious traffic cones. She'd set up a line of cones and signs along the road claiming future site of estates at Lundy's Landing Phase 2. Before sunrise, I rattled a feed bucket and lined the cones up on our side, let the cows stare at them. Commuters drove past, cows looked bored, code enforcement showed up, took photos, moved the cones. Deputy Cruz called, laughing, leave public right-of-way art to the artist's mark. Sam got creative with the HOA newsletter. She found their public submission portal and slipped in a recipe for Mark Thomas's famous Red Barn chili, complete with a photo of my barn at sunset. It ran on the front page. We heard later it was the most popular edition in years. And then there was my Uncle Danny, the original prankster, who dropped by with a trunk full of dish soap. The new neighborhood fountain foamed up like a rabid dog overnight. No one knew who did it. The kids thought it was magic. But all this wasn't just for laughs. We were building morale, giving the neighborhood a reason to laugh at Karen to stop being scared. Because when a bully starts getting laughed at, the power starts to shift. But while Karen was busy chasing bubbles and flip signs, we were pulling the real thread, her forged map. The pranks bought us time, but time was exactly what we needed, time to pull apart Karen's fantasy map and show the world the truth. Because that drone card buried in those files was a blurry screenshot of her so-called revised annexation survey, the document she'd been waving around as if it were gospel. Sam printed it out, and I called up Bob, an old friend and retired county surveyor who could spot a phony land claim a mile away. Revised map, huh? He chuckled over the phone. Ain't been a revision on that land since before my knees gave out. I'll meet you at the fence line sunrise. Bring coffee. So the next morning, as the sky was still stretching out its colors, I found Bob already waiting by his truck, steaming thermos in hand and a roll of county maps under his arm. He had a face carved by sun and wind, a pair of eyes that didn't miss a thing, and a manner that said he was born for this kind of work. I handed him the printed screenshot. He unrolled it next to one of his own maps, both spread out across his tailgate, pinned down with rocks and a rusty hammer. He studied them for a good 5 minutes, tracing the lines, squinting at the details. Finally, he tapped this corner of Karen's revised map. "See that benchmark," he said. "That's a GPS marker installed by the county in 2018. But this map dated 2005. The original benchmarks back then were still old brass discs set in concrete downtown. It's like finding a dinosaur with a cell phone." We both laughed, but it was that angry, tired kind of laugh because this was all the proof we needed.
You broke
Karen
the law,
had been
and you know
sloppy,
it.
mixing up
These
the old
officers
and the
agree
new.
with me. Yeah.
They work
That
for the
single
county,
symbol
not for
was a
you.
fingerprint
Get
of
off my land
smoking
before I
gun.
make you.
Bob didn't just point
How
it out, he
dare you
documented
defy
it.
a court order?
We took photos of the two maps close-ups
I'm
of the
not leaving my
benchmarks,
home because of your
GPS readings
paperwork.
along the property line, Bob's sworn
should have seen his
affidavit
face when
stating
the siren
plain as
went
day
off.
that Karen's map
stop
was
it,
a
that's
forgery
terrible.
based on a physical
No,
impossibility.
seriously, the look on
I
his
thought
face.
that'd be the end of it. We scheduled a meeting with the County Planning Commission, a room full of people who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else but there. We laid it all out, the forgery, the affidavit, the whole ugly story of Karen's harassment. The chairman, a man with a politician's smile, listened politely, nodded a lot, then hit us with the old, "our hands are tied" speech. "The HOA has already submitted this map in a pending legal action against your property. Until the courts rule, we can't intervene." I argued, Sam argued, even Bob argued, but it was like shouting into a hole. "The wheels of justice turn slowly," the chairman said. And that was that. We filed our evidence anyway, an injunction, an evidence packet, Bob's affidavit, and braced for the legal slow roll. That night I sat on the porch feeling like the world was moving too slow for people like Karen to ever get what they deserved. Sam brought me a cold beer and sat beside me, our boots side by side in the dust. "We're not done," she said, her voice steady. "We just have to stop playing by her rules." She was right, of course. And she knew the card I'd been hiding up my sleeve. See, before I came back to run the ranch, I had a different life, a career as a software architect. I built compliance platforms for HOAs across the country, including, by some twist of fate, Lundy's Landing Zone system. And when I'd built that thing, I'd insisted on a kill switch, a protocol I called the auditor's key. If fraud was detected, the system would freeze all accounts and force a state-level audit. It was there to stop exactly this kind of mess. I'd never used it, never even seen it triggered, but I still had access. Deep in the admin code with the right credentials and the right evidence, I could pull the plug on every dollar Karen could touch. It felt like playing God, and I hesitated. If I do this, I told Sam, it's not just Karen who gets hurt. It's the whole community, landscapers, pool guys, vendors, all those people waiting on payments. But Sam shook her head. "The homeowners are already getting hurt. You built that switch for a reason. Karen's using everyone's money to wage a war of lies. You have a way to stop her. Let's see what happens when you take away her power." So I did. I spent a full day hunched over my laptop, logging in through back channels, hunting for that old piece of code like it was buried treasure. I loaded the drone footage, the maps, Bob's affidavit, every scrap of proof, and let the system run the audit check. Red flags everywhere. Financial and governance irregularities detected. Initiate mandatory compliance audit. 2 buttons, yes or no. My whole life I've fixed things with my hands, a busted engine, a sagging gate, a loose shingle. But this was fixing things with a click. "Here goes nothing," I muttered, and I hit yes. That was it. Account frozen. Pending audit. The digital guillotine had dropped. It took a day for the effects to show. The landscapers didn't come. The pool closed, the trash piled up. HOA payments were bouncing like rubber balls. Residents started to notice loudly. Why are we paying dues if nothing's getting done? Why are our fees going to lawsuits over barns that aren't even in the HOA? Karen's grip started to slip. It didn't take long before the anger in Lundy's Landing hit a boiling point. The recall clause in their bylaws only needed 25% of the homeowners to sign a number Sam and her friends hit in 48 hours. The clubhouse was packed for the recall vote, folks standing shoulder to shoulder, voices raised. Karen sat up front, eyes wild, gavel banging, shouting about procedure and baseless accusations, but the crowd had had enough. "Where's our money, Karen?" someone yelled. "Why are you suing a rancher?" Ballots were passed, filled out, dropped in the box. It was a landslide. But Karen wasn't going quietly. As the last ballots went in, her beefy goon tried to snatch the box and make a run for it. Didn't count on Mrs. Gable's sweet lady 70X roller derby champion. She stuck out her leg, tripped him up, ballots scattered everywhere. In the chaos, Karen was on her hands and knees shoving ballots into her purse. And through it all, there was Sam standing on a chair holding her phone high, that little red light blinking. She caught every second. That was the nail in the coffin. A president caught on video stealing ballots in front of 100 witnesses. We didn't rush to post the video online. We waited for the right moment. That moment came sooner than we thought. When you fight a bully for long enough, you start to realize some endings you have to build yourself. We had the video of Karen stuffing ballots in her purse. We had the drone footage. We had the forged map and the money trail. All we needed now was a stage. That's when luck or fate or maybe just a little poetic justice handed us the perfect opportunity. The state HOA summit was coming up, held at the Capitol every year. Board presidents, property managers, industry lawyers, all the people who write and rewrite the rules for folks like me would be there. And by some old contract quirk, the software company that bought my code always mailed one complimentary badge to the ranch like a haunted relic. Most years I tossed it in the junk drawer. This year I looked at Sam and said, "What do you think?" She grinned. "We're going." We spent the next 2 weeks working like possessed people. I dug deep into Lundy's Landing's frozen accounts, every payment, every check, every invoice. Sam built a presentation tight as a drum that would lay out the story from start to finish. My red barn, the threats, the drone, the forged map, and then the money. D&E Development, LLC. Karen's personal piggy bank siphoning off HOA dues to a P.O. box in her name. The legal battle against me wasn't just a vendetta, it was her cover story. The day of the summit, I dusted off a suit that hadn't seen daylight since my cousin's wedding, felt more like a scarecrow than a CEO. Sam looked sharp, all business camera bags slung over her shoulder. We drove to the convention center, a monument to beige glass and artificial lighting, which honestly fit the occasion a little too well. We slipped into the main ballroom during a panel on navigating legal challenges in community management. Perfect timing. I got in line behind a guy grilling the panel about garage door shades. My turn came and I stepped up to the mic. "My name's Mark Thomas. I don't have a question, but I do have a case study." Before the moderator could cut me off, Sam was already by the tech booth plugging her laptop into the projector. Her vendor badge matched the AV list. The screen flickered, and suddenly there was my barn big and bright red as ever for everyone to see. I told the story slow and steady, how Karen tried to bury me in fines, how she sabotaged my water, how she sent a drone to spy, how she forged a map, and finally how she funneled money to herself while pretending to protect her community. Slide after slide, you could feel the temperature in the room drop, the whispering swell, the realization ripple through all those HOA brass. And then came the finale. And when her homeowners tried to recall her, this is what she did. Sam hit play. The video of the recall meeting filled the ballroom screens, Karen wild-eyed stuffing ballots into her bag while her neighbors shouted. Gasps. Some folks laughed out loud. A man in the front row stood suit sharp, voice sharper. "Mr. Thomas David Riley, State Attorney General's Office, HOA Division, we need to talk." Just like that, the ground shifted. Karen's empire built in the shadows was about to face real daylight. We left the ballroom in a daze. Sam squeezed my hand so hard, I thought she might break a finger. In the parking lot, I took a long, shaky breath, the first real one in months. The AG's office took all the evidence. Flash drives, affidavits, video files, they promised a full investigation. "We'll move fast," Riley said, and you could tell he meant it. But even then I knew Karen wouldn't go down easy. Cornered animals are the most dangerous, and she had nowhere left to run. 2 days later, Deputy Cruz called. "Mark, just giving you a heads up. We've got a warrant for Karen Dane's arrest. Fraud, embezzlement, election tampering, the works. Stay on your side of the fence and let us handle it. She's unpredictable." I thanked him and hung up, heart pounding. Sam was already reaching for her phone. We need to be out there. This is the ending, the real one. We waited on the porch, watched the sky turn gold over the barn. And then not police sirens, but the whine of a golf cart. Karen, red pantsuit, wrinkled hair, flying fury in every step, came tearing across her precious lawns, straight at the fence line. She slammed to a stop, jumped out, gripping the old axe handle her goon once used. For a second, I wondered if she'd really try something crazy. She was shaking, wild-eyed, her voice shrill and broken. You did this. You ruined me. I built this community, and you're a disease. She stepped forward, waving the axe handle, threatening to tear down the fence, the barn, everything. I didn't move. No, Karen, I said, voice calm. You did this to yourself. You lied, you stole, and you lost. You were always going to lose. Sirens echoed over the field.
You broke the
Two
law,
police
and you
cruisers
know
pulled
it.
up, lights
These officers
flashing.
agree with me.
Cruz
Yeah.
stepped out, hand on his weapon. Karen Dane dropped the axe handle now.
How
She
dare you
froze,
defy a
shoulders
court order?
slumping suddenly. Small lost.
I'm not leaving my
Powerless.
home because of your
The handle
paperwork.
fell to the grass.
You should have
Cruz
seen
and
his
another
face when the
deputy
siren
cuffed her
went
Ritter
off.
writes the same
Oh,
words she
stop it,
probably
that's
thought
terrible.
she'd never hear. She wouldn't
No,
look
seriously,
at me
the look
as
on
they
his
put her in
face.
the car. The cars rolled off, sirens quiet now. And all that was left was the wind, the dust, and the first true quiet I'd known in a year. Sam came and stood beside me, hand in mine. It's over, she whispered. But it didn't really feel over, not yet. In the weeks that followed, the rot in Lundy's Landing came out into the sun. Karen's board cronies resigned, each blaming the other and both blaming her. The state audit found years of skimming and fraud. The local news ran the story, Red Barn Rancher beats bully HOA. By the weekend, the barn was famous. The homeowners, seeing what their dues had paid for, voted to dissolve the HOA entirely. They replaced it with a volunteer committee whose main purpose was to throw a block party and keep their noses out of people's business. Karen took a plea fraud, embezzlement, election tampering. The judge tossed her lawsuit, declared her annexation map a criminal forgery. The ranch was mine, the fence just a fence again. Neighbors brought burgers and beer. Kids played tag in the pasture. Old Mr. Henderson, the rose guy, grinned at me and said, "Never liked that red barn." Now it's my favorite color. But word got out fast and wide. Letters came from all over, folks with stories like mine. Veterans hassled over flags, grandparents threatened over bird feeders, families buried under fines. Sam and I used part of the settlement to build the Fair Fence Foundation. We posted guides for recalls, fraud checks, public records tools for regular folks to fight back. Life settled down. No more drones, no more Karen. Just crickets, cattle, sunsets, and the quiet satisfaction of work done right. Some days a stranger will slow down, look at the barn, and smile. And every once in a while I look at that fence still standing, still strong, and think about how much a line in the dirt can really mean. Funny thing, peace, when it finally comes, is never as loud as the storm that came before it. Out here, the world slipped quietly back into its rhythm. The sound of wind in the grass, the soft huff of cattle, Samantha's laughter rolling out from the porch. These were the things I'd fought for, the things I'd almost forgotten could feel so simple. But life didn't just go back. You don't walk through fire and come out the same. Some days I'd catch myself glancing at the fence, half expecting Karen to come marching up in that red suit binder under her arm, armed with another ridiculous claim. It's like the shadow of her stubbornness still haunted the far edge of my pasture. But mostly it made me grateful. Grateful for honest work, for neighbors who had my back when it really counted, and for Sam, who never once let me fight this battle alone. The ranch changed too. Not in the way Karen wanted, of course, no beige houses, no bulldozers, no phase 2. Instead, we put the settlement money right back into the land. New roof for the barn, still as red as the first sunrise after a storm. We built a small playground where the cows never seemed to mind the noise. The fence, once a front line, was now just the place where kids traded stories and neighbors shared a beer at sunset. And something else happened too, something I never saw coming. All those letters and calls from people across the county, across the state, folks who were tired of being pushed around by rules that made no sense, by boards that thought power meant never having to say sorry. We realized, Sam and I, that maybe what happened out here wasn't just about us. It was about everyone who ever felt outnumbered, outbullied, outlawyered. So we took the last of the restitution and got to work. The Fair Fence Foundation started small, a website with templates, guides, advice from friendly lawyers who remembered their roots. Turn on the lights. Sam liked to say that's how you chase bullies out of the dark. We taught people how to file public records requests, organize recalls, check financials, stand up in meetings. And you know what people did? And they won. Some days I'd answer emails at the kitchen table, long after the chores were done, veterans who wanted to fly a flag, young couples trying to plant a tree for their kids' retirees who just wanted to keep a bird feeder on the porch. Every time someone sent a photo of a fixed fence, a saved tree, a bright front door, I'd print it and pin it to the board in my barn. After a year, that board was covered a patchwork quilt of ordinary victories. The best part was the stories that rolled in, one from a guy in Texas who built his dream workshop, another from a teacher in Florida who got her neighborhood to plant a community garden, a retired nurse in Arizona whose HOA tried to fine her for hanging wind chimes and lost spectacularly. Each story a reminder that ordinary folks can win, not just survive. As for Karen, the state moved fast once the dominoes started falling. She took a plea, did her time, and last I heard moved to a condo in the city nowhere near any board or ballot box. I don't wish her ill. Truth is, I hope she finds a way to build something that matters to her this time without stepping on anybody else. Everybody deserves a second chance if they're willing to take it. Lundy's Landing is different now. Without the HOA breathing down their necks, people talk more. There's a fall block party every year, potluck tables stretching down the old street, kids racing in circles, folks who never used to wave now sitting out on porches, swapping stories about the Great Barn War or the Fountain Foam incident. Somebody even put up a tiny red barn birdhouse at the neighborhood entrance. Never let 'em tell you to paint it beige, the sign underneath reads. Sometimes when the sky goes gold and the shadows run long across the pasture, I walk that old fence line. I think about my granddad, about all the lines people draw, not just in the dirt, but in their hearts. Some lines are for keeping people out. But the best ones? They're for bringing folks together. For showing where you stand, sure, but also for saying, here's where I'll meet you, here's where we figure it out. And I know I'll never take that piece for granted again. You know, looking back, if you'd told me the biggest fight of my life would be over the color of a barn and the length of a fence, I'd have laughed you off my porch. But that's how it goes. Sometimes the battles that matter most sneak up on you wearing a smile, carrying a binder, thinking they can just outlast you with paperwork and patience. Sometimes the only way to win is to stand your ground, to gather your friends, to rope a drone out of the sky and remind the world that power belongs to those who refuse to back down. If you're out there fighting your own battle, big or small, I hope you'll remember this. You're not alone. The line you hold, the story you tell, the peace you keep, it matters more than you know. And sometimes the most ordinary life, one honest fence at a time, turns out to be the biggest, wildest adventure there is. So if you're ever driving down an old county road and you spot a stubbornly red barn standing guard over a line of grass and wildflowers, maybe you'll think of me. And if you're lucky, you'll catch the sun just right, so you can see for yourself how beautiful freedom looks when you finally get it back. A funny thing happened after the dust settled. What started as a one-time fight for one stubborn barn turned into something bigger, something we never saw coming. The Fair Fence Foundation, born out of late nights and frustration and the kind of hope that only grows in hard soil, started to spread. Folks from all over the state, heck, all over the country, started writing in, sharing their stories, asking for help, offering their own tricks and lessons learned in the trenches of HOA wars. There was the couple in North Carolina whose HOA tried to ban their backyard vegetable garden. They won their case with a template we'd written. a retired Air Force mechanic in Nevada, finally got the right to hang an American flag on his porch after years of petty threats. Out in Kansas, a teacher banded her neighbors together to recall a board that was fining elderly residents for having non-regulation wind chimes. In Ohio, a single mom with 3 kids found the courage to show up at a board meeting and read from the Fair Fence recall guide. Her whole street showed up behind her, and the board backed down. We started holding webinars, nothing fancy, just Sam and me on a laptop in the barn, sharing screen explaining how to check public records, how to recognize a fraudulent map, how to read between the lines when the bylaws look like a crossword puzzle. Lawyers and accountants, folks who'd once been on the other side of these battles, started volunteering their time answering emails, jumping into late-night Zoom calls to walk someone through the steps. It wasn't about fighting every rule or hating every HOA. Most folks just wanted common sense, a little dignity, the right to live in peace on the land they worked for. Sometimes it was just about giving people the words to say enough to hold a line to draw a new one together. And something beautiful grew out of all that mess, a community built not on fear, not on fines, but on looking out for one another. Some folks sent in thank you notes, usually handwritten, sometimes with a photo of a painted door or a flag finally flying, sometimes just a smiley face and a "We won." Sam put every single one up on the barn wall right next to the old family photos. That wall got pretty crowded, let me tell you. We got invited to speak at town halls, on radio shows, even a podcast or two. I'll admit I'm more comfortable with a pair of work gloves than a microphone, but Sam, she's got a way with people. She'd tell our story, let me play the straight man, and always remind everyone listening, this isn't about hating your neighbor, it's about standing up together, about turning fences into bridges, not walls. The more we did, the more people stepped up themselves. A young lawyer from Louisiana started her own porch rights clinic, offering free advice to anyone tangled up in HOA red tape. A group of veterans in Texas formed a neighborhood coalition helping families facing wrongful foreclosures. There was even a little old lady in Oregon who started an annual ugly mailbox parade, the kind of thing Karen would have fainted over just because she could. Our barn became a kind of local landmark, not because it was big or pretty, but because it never changed color, never caved, never hid. People would drive by, slow down, roll down the window, and wave, sometimes honking twice, sometimes just to let us know they'd been there, that they understood what it meant. And, sometimes the fight still comes knocking. Bureaucracy never really sleeps. There's always another letter, another new neighbor with questions, another story that starts with, "You'll never believe what happened to me." But we're ready now. The tools are sharper, the community's stronger, and the old fear that kept people silent is mostly gone. The fence is just a fence, the barn is just a barn. But what they stand for, well, that's the part that lasts. It's in every handshake, every barn-raised chili cook-off, every kid who grows up knowing their backyard is theirs to defend and their neighbor is someone to trust, not fear. At the end of the day, this country's always been a place where regular people draw their lines, sometimes in dirt, sometimes in ink, sometimes just by standing up and saying, "This is home." That's what America is to me now, messy, loud, stubborn as a red barn, but stronger together than apart. So if you ever find yourself up against a bully, a board, or just a mountain of red tape, remember there's more of us than there are of them. And you never have to fight alone. Maybe one day, if you're out this way, you'll stop by for a cup of coffee or to walk the fence line at sunset, and you'll see for yourself how much can grow from a stubborn patch of grass and a little ordinary courage. And if you do, don't be shy. Come on up to the porch, knock, tell your story. Out here we've got time. The porch light's always on.